Hey there. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Tinnitist TV. Today, I am talking to the one and only Pearl Harbor. You know, there are great albums that everyone knows and great albums that almost no one has heard. Pearl Harbor's second full-length Don't Follow Me, I'm Lost Too definitely belongs in the second group. It's not for lack of talent. Along with Pearl's powerhouse vocals, this 1980 release boasts an all-star British backing band featuring members of The Clash, the Blockheads, Dr. Feelgood, the Rumour, and others. And it's certainly not the songs. In addition to her own lighthearted rockabilly ditties, the disc features her unforgettable take on Wanda Jackson's Fujiyama Mama. Simply put, this is an album you should own. And now you can. It's just been refurbished and reissued in an expanded edition. A couple of weeks before the album dropped, Pearl got on Zoom from California to talk about her eventful life, which includes a stint dancing with the Tubes, her first band, The Explosions, her marriage to Paul Simonon, and tons more. Enjoy. Well,
Okay,
listen, it is a
sorry.
pleasure. It is a pleasure to talk to you today.
I'm
Uh,
happy to be here.
yes, I'm very thrilled to talk to you today. I'm doubly thrilled that we are getting to talk about this lovely, fantastic album.
Hey, I know that
I
record.
bet you do. I
Have
bet you
you
do.
had that since back in the day?
I've had this since it came out 40 years
44
ago.
years ago
Exactly.
when I was
And
12
and
and
to me,
school.
it has always been one of the those great albums that most people have never heard, you know?
Right, that's right, because Warner Brothers were really angry with me when I left Pearl Harbor and the explosions. Then I moved to London and made that record, and they were like, "What is this?" From Pearl Harbor and explosions to this. And they, said, and it was before the Stray Cats or anything, so they just felt that it was some useless, rockabilly music that nobody would like, and they said no, no hits, and then they were also really angry because I didn't credit the musicians, but I didn't credit the musicians because in London, the press there can be so cruel. And Cosmo, who worked with the Clash and Ian Jury, and he was my manager, said, well, if we don't credit any of the musicians, the press won't jump on you and they won't say, oh, the only reason anybody listened to this record is because the Clash and the Blockheads are on it. So I said, okay, but it was, I guess, the wrong thing to do. In hindsight, I'm sorry that I did that.
I
But
was
at
going to
the
ask.
time, at the time it was like, yeah, it's don't milk these other guys because
Sure.
it's come back and bite you in the butt, so.
Well, yeah, but I mean, and for people who don't know, it's like you've got Paul and Topper and even Mick Jones. You got three-quarters of the Clash on here. Wilko Johnson playing guitar. I mean, come on.
I know.
Mickey Gallagher producing, Steve New, Steve Golding from the Rumour, twin drummers, BJ Cole and Pet. It's just a ridiculous embarrassment of riches
I
that
know.
that
I
seems
was so
like.
lucky. Imagine me, this kid, American kid who'd never, and all these, because of Cosmo asked them, would you play with this American girl? And she collects records and she likes all the same kind of music we do. And then we went into rehearsal and they could see that it was all 3 minute, songs with, that were very simple and very old school. And they said, sure, we like this stuff. So we made it very quickly. Almost everything was done in one or two takes.
Yeah, well, it's got that immediacy of it. It feels like it's got a live performance quality to it, as opposed to being, put together one track at a time the way they
Yeah,
did.
loads of overdubs and all that. No, it
Yeah.
isn't like that at all. Yeah.
I mean, were you obviously you knew who these people were at the time? I mean, that I would think that that was just slightly intimidating to be in the room with all these people. I mean, how do you walk up to some of these guys and go, you know what? I think maybe you should play it a little bit this way instead of that way? Or did you even have to do that? you know?
I did, because I had to explain before we would record each one. I would say this song, when I wrote this song, I had such and such in mind. Let's just say everybody's boring but my baby. That's so obvious anyways that I was trying to do a girl group sound. But
Right.
then I would just say, and then so we'd all play it before we'd record it, play it, go through it once or twice, and then I'd say, something like, oh, if you don't mind, I'd rather keep the solo a bit more simple. They didn't care. They were so, and I had to be strong, and I had to be um, I couldn't be intimidated by them, even though I was, but that's the good thing about youth. I was a
Right.
kid, I was in my early 20s, and I was sort of scared of everything and nothing all at the same time. So I
Right.
knew these people were really great and all that stuff, but I was determined to be, just as great.
And you were.
Well, in my mind I was, but no, no, no.
Uh-huh.
I can't sing as good as Wilko can play rhythm guitar. No.
Well, I
No.
think you hold your own wonderfully for somebody in that in
Oh,
over your head like you were. But let's go back a bit because talking about having those qualities and that confidence of youth. If I read your bio right, you grew up as an army brat, right? So you
yeah.
were moving from place to place and here
Yes.
and there. And
Uh-huh.
a lot of those qualities, I think that come with that, the sort of independence and self-reliance and having to walk into a new school or a new peer group every year or 2 years.
You're right. You got that right.
They seem to suit a musician very well, you know?
Yeah, I know. There are lots of musicians who are army brats because of that reason, I think. And yeah, it does give you this confidence. It either gives you a confidence or else you either sink or swim, like I had four older brothers, and a couple of my older brothers were very, very shy, and it was very difficult for them. Whereas, if you're a bit more outgoing and I always kept throughout my school years and all through having bands, you keep your eyes and your ears wide open and your mouth shut, and it works.
Uh-huh.
You only speak when you have something good to say, or it's no complaining, no whining. You just sort of try to be as easy to get along with as possible. And that was the same as at school too.
Oh, and I would think having four older brothers, again, for a woman is great training for being in a band.
Absolutely. Men are no mystery to me. And
So, so
that is important when you have a band.
totally, totally. So you end up in San Francisco in the early 70s, which seems to me to be just a great time to be in that place and that music scene at that,
Was.
you
It
know?
was, you're right. I mean, I left school in 1973 and I was 17 years old. I'd never been to San Francisco. But I was a bad kid, a bad teenager, and I said to my parents, I'm moving to San Francisco. And they said, okay, bye. My dad gave me a one-way ticket and $100, and that was it. I was gone. But
Okay.
it was everything I dreamed it would be. I wanted to be around hippies. I wanted to be around music, and I wanted to be around marijuana, and it was all it was all there. Um, so yeah, and then there was such great music in San Francisco at that time, and the Tubes were one of them. And then I said, I want to be in that band. And then the next thing I knew it, I was, because they had a talent contest and I won it. And so all these things happened to me, and I don't know why. And they all sort of connected everything.
Right.
Leland the Snakes came from the Tubes. Pearl Harbor and the Explosions came from Leland the Snakes. Then when I moved to London, being a solo artist and getting to play with all these different people was because I'd met Cosmo. So I
Well,
don't
yeah, I would think that the Tubes time must have been interesting because you sort of got to be in there with them, but not, you could sort of stand back and learn a bit and watch them and see what they were doing and get that sort of training about
Absolutely.
how to be a front person and be in a band and what goes on.
That was my rock and roll high school was being with the Tubes and Leela and the Snakes. Jane Leela,
Yeah.
she taught me everything I know about stage presence. She said, as soon as you get on stage, you got to make them laugh, and once you make them laugh, you
Ah,
got them. And that's the truth, because all my showbiz is all has a sense of humor. The songs that I write, the way that I act on stage, the way that I dress, everything has a sense of humor about it, because I don't want people to think that I take myself so seriously, because I don't,
right.
So yeah, that all, and I had never been around a rock band like the Tubes. I mean, nobody has.
Nobody had, yeah,
So
exactly.
backstage, I mean, I was like, oh my God, sex and drugs and rock and roll. Oh my gosh. It was like the bathroom door was always locked, and something weird was always going on in there. And then all these people offering you drugs. And thank goodness I didn't like drugs, because otherwise I probably wouldn't be here right now. So
Right. Well, as you wrote about in one of the B-sides from this album, you got me all wrong.
right, right.
So you have that you form the Explosions and you have that first album and you have that hit with Drivin'. Um, and now 99% of people, I think, would go, okay, this is a good start. We've got our foot in the door. We're a rung up the ladder, and they would stay there and carry on with that and make another new wavy album, you know. But you kind of take this complete left turn and leave the band and leave the continent and remake everything. What was the impetus for that? Or are you just somebody who was at that time easily bored, or were you chasing something else, or what?
I was chasing rock and roll.
Okay.
And the Explosions, John and Hillary, the bass player and the drummer, brothers, the Haynes brothers, they joined Leland and the Snakes. I guess it was in 77, and maybe the early 78. But at any rate, we all decided we were in someone else's band, and she wrote all the music, and it was her show, and it was fun, and it was good, and it was a learning experience. But after a while, we wanted to write music too. So we would, especially me, I would hand Jane some lyrics, and she would say, no, I write my own lyrics. And I go, oh, okay, okay, okay. And then she would want to record something. And then a lot of times when she'd record something, she wouldn't even use me. And I was thinking, I want to record and I want to write music. And John and Hillary were the same. So the three of us said, hey, we should start our own band. But before we said, hey, we should start our own band, we didn't discuss the fact that they liked jazz fusion, and I hate jazz fusion, and I love rockabilly and rock and roll, and they hate rockabilly and rock and roll. So
Right.
they would call it mindless rockabilly, and I'd go, yeah, yeah, mindless, that's great, and they'd say, no, it isn't, that's for idiots. And I'd say, no, it isn't, blah, blah. So the album that we made was the most successful I've ever been, even though I don't care for a lot of the songs, because it wasn't my cup of tea. And then touring, we toured with the Talking Heads, which was fantastic. And the album sold really well, and the tour did really well. And so when I said to Warner Brothers, I want to leave the band and play rock and roll, oh my gosh, they were so upset, and they were really, really angry with me, because they had really promoted Pearl Harbor and the Explosions, and it was successful. So, when I handed them "Don't Follow Me, I'm Lost Too," they were like, "What is this?"
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, you can kind of hear a bit of that conflict, I guess, on the Explosions album because you've got those new wave songs like Driving, and then there's a bit of rockabilly in there, and you can kind of hear that there are different forces kind of trying to get their thing in there. And you guys were doing Black Slacks when you played live,
Right.
and you were
That,
doing,
that's
I think,
true.
Nerves at that time with them. So
Yes.
that seed was already there.
Yeah, and that was because they allowed me to do Black Slacks and Nerves. But they would never record them when they didn't really like them. It was sort of to please me, which
Right. So
I,
it was inevitable that you kind of had to go off. And what was it specifically about rockabilly that really caught you, as opposed to, I mean, as opposed to say, 60s garage rock or other things that are sort of tangential, you know?
yeah, I discovered 60s garage rock a little bit later. I think the reason why rockabilly appealed to me was because it was very danceable. I thought it had a sense of humor.
Mhm.
My favorite female singers were, Wanda Jackson and Brenda Lee, Janice Martin sort of, and Sparkle Moore sort of, but it was more Wanda Jackson and Brenda Lee who I liked the most. But their music, especially Wanda Jackson, I've obviously did
Sure.
Fujiyama Mama, but her voice is the same tone as mine. Sort of no comparison. She's a way better singer than me, but I can sing that style very easily. And that's something that really interests me. After a while, though, Daryl, I became disillusioned with rockabilly because it seemed like every song was well diddle 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 diddle, and so
Can be
I was
formulaic, yeah.
yeah, I just thought, oh no, and so that's why I started sneaking in the girl group stuff and going more, having a rounder repertoire than just
Well, I have to compliment you though on Fujiyama Mama, because at the time you did it, that was before Wanda kind of had her resurgence. I mean, that was a
absolutely.
pretty obscure
It was
crate
very
digger kind of
obscure.
song at the
Yeah.
time, you know?
Well, in outside of San Francisco is a little town called Mill Valley across the Golden Gate Bridge, and there's a guy named John Goddard, and he had the best record store you've ever been to in your life. So I used to hang out at his record store and say, play me all your favorite female vocalists. And he didn't mind because I just was this kid that would sit in a chair and listen to all the records that he played. So that's how I learned all about the female vocalists and then we talked about them and Wanda Jackson and everything, and so I concentrated on that, and then later on, like I said, I fell in love with the garage rock, but that was later on. But
Did you
but
ever meet Wanda?
I met her many times. I went
Yeah.
to all her shows that I could and brought her all my records and had her sign them all.
Oh,
And
sweet.
wonderful woman, really sweet.
Yeah, I saw her a couple of times and interviewed her once when she did that Jack White produced album, and it was just,
Oh yeah, I like that. Did you see her with Jack White?
I didn't see her with Jack White, but with her band around that time, you
Oh,
know? Yeah,
it
and
was sweet. I liked what he did with her. At first, my feathers got ruffled, and I thought, wait a minute. But nah, he did a great job with
oh
her, and
yeah.
I she really enjoyed herself. And he turned a lot more people on to Wanda Jackson than I did. But I am the first person who, did Wanda Jackson in 1980. Nobody had heard of her, but I never really got much credit for that, but which always hurt my feelings, but that's okay. These things happen. Yeah.
Exactly. And then your own songwriting. One of the things I like about your songs is they're just so playfully common sense, down to earth. I mean, you're not writing about these lofty, it's like I'm at the dentist, or the power went out, or I'm getting strip searched at the airport. It feels
Uh,
like, you would just sort of sit down and go, what happened to me today? And go, well, here's a song.
Yeah, my songs are sort of like country music because they're all just true stories and they're all silly stories. It's kind of the opposite of the Clash, because they were
Sure.
doing all these political songs and all their songs meant something. But like you said, all mine were just all lighthearted. But that's me, I don't like to talk about politics. I like to be silly, and so that's what I. That's
Yeah.
why my records are the way that
Well,
they
it
are.
worked. I mean, and they kind of suit rockabilly because it's,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
energy and
yeah.
fun and lighthearted in general, or should be, I think. So
Right.
talking about the Clash, obviously you were married to Paul for most of the 80s.
Uh-huh.
That must have been just a crazy time just based on the trajectory of both of your lives and careers at that point.
It was so great. We had so much fun. I was so lucky. I just, you know, Paul and I, we got along so well. We liked the same kind of music, same kind of clothes, same kind of motorcycle, same kind of cars. We just really got along really great, and we traveled well together. So I got to travel with the Clash, and then a lot of times our band was a support act for the Clash. But yeah, I just lucked out because I can't say anything bad. It's a bit like the grass is always greener. You always remember everything good that happened, and I hardly remember any of the bad stuff.
Oh, that's good.
Everything I remember was all we did was have fun, and we traveled all over the world and saw all kinds of really cool stuff and shopped. We went record shopping and everywhere we went, and we just had so much fun. I can't say it enough that I was very lucky.
Oh, that's great. And from what I get the sense online, it seems like you guys are still friendly,
Yes, uh-huh.
which
Yeah,
is
he called the
fantastic.
other day. At first when we broke up, he left me for another person. So then that wasn't very nice for me. And so for a few years we didn't speak, but I moved back to San Francisco and he stayed in London. So it was easy to not see each other, and it was easy to not. And then at Joe Strummer's funeral was the first time I really saw Paul and hung out with him. So that was 2002.
Right.
And I said to Paul, we really should get back together as friends because we had so much fun and we experienced so many wonderful things all around the world. We shouldn't let stupid stuff like romance, spoil our friendship. And he said that he agreed. So after that, we always wrote each other and speak on the phone. And he's a great artist, as you probably
Yes.
know. And he sends me paintings, and we have a real nice friendship.
That is great to hear. I love that. That's such a nice story because, rock and roll and marriages and, it can go so bad in so many ways that it's nice that you guys have preserved the friendship.
Yeah, it's hard though, being in a band and traveling all the time, and especially if you're a handsome guy like Paul, all
Well,
the
you picked the right
gals.
one of the band. Come on, though.
Well, hey, I'm agreeing with you, but yeah, I'd go backstage after a Clash show, and there'd be like 20 models, grabbing his lapels and talking to him, like that, and I'd be like, whoa.
Well, you weren't doing so bad yourself here. Come on.
Yeah, I don't know, I was okay, but yeah, those models.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
everywhere backstage, especially in New York. Oh my goodness, all those, because they did 3 weeks at Bonds, remember that?
Right, sure, yeah.
And so, for 3 weeks it was model heaven backstage at the Clash. So I was always, oh my goodness. So it's hard. It's a little bit, that's hard, but that's your life. So you
Sure.
do with it.
It seems to me like you should be writing a memoir.
People say that all the time, but I say I'm not famous enough to write one because I have really good stories, but most people haven't heard of me. So why should they want to buy a book from a little gal that they've never heard of?
Well, I think you underestimate yourself. But
Oh,
so talking about, you guys record shopping all over the world and this and that, and you were obviously collecting before then. Are you still a collector? Do you have a massive, wonderful record collection that we'd all like to break into your house and steal?
kind of, yes. And as I've moved so many times, I've picked out, maybe this many albums that I don't want anymore, but
Uh-huh.
I'll keep all the other ones. And then the next time I move, I'll take this many out. So yeah, I have a great record collection, and people who are collectors, when they come over, they sit on the floor, and it's like I can tell they're just in heaven, just pulling out all the albums. And saying, "Can I borrow this?" And I'd say no.
That's the answer. That's the right answer.
Yeah,
Yes,
no. Yeah, because that's a good way to lose your records is people
exactly.
borrow them. That happened to me all the time when I was young. People
Sure,
borrow.
sure. So,
Didn't,
so getting back to this record, I mean, even though I understand the concept of record companies not being the swiftest on the uptake and the whole thing about the names, I
yeah,
still don't get how anybody listens to this album and doesn't hear like five singles and the Stray Cats album only came out at like 2 or 3 months after you guys. Like you weren't that like this was the end of 1980, right?
yes,
And the Stray Cats first album comes out in like February or March of 81. So I mean, you
that's
were ahead
true.
of the curve.
Yeah, and I saw their first gig in London at a little pub because they played with Whirlwind,
Right. Your
my
guitarist. Yeah.
yeah. And I couldn't believe Brian Setzer. He was fantastic. And I said to myself, these guys are going to do well, and they sure did.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, like I said, I still don't understand who listens to this album at a record company and doesn't go Fujiyama Mama's, not going to be a chart topping single or something. That's just crazy
Well,
talk.
I wish you had a record company and then I could talk into your record company because no, they didn't like it. They didn't like any of it. They didn't like any of the songs. They didn't like any of it.
Okay.
And
So I mean, so what did that mean for you? I mean, beyond the scope of this album, which obviously, as you said, they didn't print a bunch of many of them, and they didn't promote it, and they kind of, just abandoned it, which happens unfortunately too often to too many people.
yeah,
In the bigger picture, in the longer term, were you kind of like then just sort of stuck in a black ball limbo for your career in general? Did you have much recourse, or were you just kind of screwed at that point?
I remember being so disappointed and sad because I really wanted to tour around the world with that record and I wanted to bring it to the States and so on. But I did tour Warner Brothers didn't give me much money or anything, but I did tour with a band there and that was really fun. That kept me going for a while. Then I did things like Wilko said, let's make a single.
Right.
So I went
Voodoo,
and
right? Yeah.
recorded Voodoo and recorded that. And then so that was 1983. So then at least that was something that I had out. And then when I went to Japan with the Clash, the Japanese started approaching me. They would call me Mrs. Clash, which cracked me up. But
That's your
they
memoir title when you get around to it.
really, oh, hey, Mrs. Flash, there you go. Yeah, somebody would be interested in that, huh?
I think you could sell that one.
Hey, I'm excited. Thank you, Daryl.
Oh, my pleasure. So yeah, the Japanese album that you get something there, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so the Japanese, when they saw me sing Fujiyama Mama, they said, "We want you to come back here and play Mama with a Japanese band." And I said, "Sure."
Yeah.
And so then I made an album for Epic Sony, and that was for Japan only.
Right.
Then I bought that Japanese album, and so I didn't have to wait that long because that was like 1983 or something.
Hmm.
And Warner Brothers dumped me in 1981. So I only had to wait a couple of years. And in the meantime, like I said, I was performing live and I recorded with Wilko. And then I took the Japanese album and brought it to Island Records in London and said, this isn't for sale anywhere but Japan. And do you like this? And they said, yeah. So there's two versions of
Right.
Pearls Galore, and so the Island Records took a few songs away from the Japanese version, said we don't really like these, and so put different songs, and then we'll put this out. So
Well, that's
uh,
good.
that
Well,
yeah.
it's kind of better that they dropped you rather than, they could have held on to you and kind of kept you in this limbo where you couldn't, really do much. So I think at the time, I'm sure it sucked, but in hindsight, I think having them let you go so you could at least go to other companies and go and work in other things is
Yeah, you're
kind of a
right.
benefit.
And that is what I wanted because they did say, we'll pay for you to make another record,
Oh, really?
but we want to be involved. And I just said no.
Do you regret that?
Yeah, I do. I was a little punk, not necessarily a punk rocker, but I was a little punk kid. I was, nah, you guys mess me around. I don't want to be around you guys. And I mean, when Pearl Harbor and the explosions, that was sort of before videos and definitely before MTV and all that kind of stuff. And they said, we want you to do a video for Driving and for Shut Up and Dance, I think it was, or maybe it was Up and Over. I can't remember, but and then at the video shoot, they had a stylist and a makeup artist, and they had a rack full of clothes, and all the clothes were spandex like Pat Benatar wore.
Sure.
And God bless her, she's a dang great artist, but it was not my cup of tea. And I said, I am not Pat Benatar. I'm not wearing that stuff. And they said, well, yes, you are, and it was kind of like, no, no, I'm not. And I said, Warner Brothers signed me, and I was wearing thrift shop clothes.
Yeah.
They know who I am, and I don't understand what this is all about. So Warner Brothers got wind that I did that, and they were really, really, really mad at me. So that was the beginning of them knowing that. And then when I said I'm moving to London, and they said, please, no, and I said, I'm moving to London. So they sort of knew that I was a stubborn, headstrong person who had my own ideas about what I wanted to do.
No, that's okay. That's how you make your mark, you know. You mentioned country a little earlier, and that's kind of what you've been doing more recently, right?
Yes, yes, I have a country band, uh-huh.
Yeah, tell me a little more about that because I haven't really heard much of it.
Well, unfortunately, let's see here. I moved out here to the desert. I lived in Coachella Valley, and there's a lot of musicians out here. And so it took me a while to, especially because of COVID, I
Sure.
moved out here in 2000 and then 2020, sorry, and then COVID hit. So it
Timing,
was
yeah.
it was hard to find musicians. So the most important musician was a pedal steel player. I knew that I definitely, and I didn't want a drummer or two drummers. I don't want drums. I
Okay.
just, because I wanted to sing. I didn't want to yell anymore. I'm always,
Right.
really have to project my voice over this giant, electronic music with a drummer who's pounding away. So anyways, and so I found these brothers on double bass and guitar, and I found a pedal steel player, and they're all friends, and they're fantastic. And so I put all the songs together, and we rehearsed a few times, and they're so good that we didn't have to rehearse for long. I booked a couple of shows. They were fantastic. The nightclub owner said, "Oh, you have a residency here if you want it." And the last Saturday of every month, I went, "Yay!" Because that's what I dreamed of. And then, 2 weeks later, I was diagnosed with lung cancer. So I have lung cancer. I don't know if you know
Right.
that.
I did, yes, yeah.
So that's really put a big damper on everything. So the band knows that I'm ill, and they're waiting for me to get better. And it will be quite a while before I can sing and have enough strength to perform again.
Hmm.
But I'm hoping that that will happen, and that I can, spend the rest of my life being a country singer, because it's really fun, and I tell jokes. It's like a comedy country show, really.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Of making everyone laugh, and all the songs are funny. And
And do the people who come to see this version of Pearl know about the other versions of Pearl?
yeah, yeah,
Okay,
especially because we only did a few songs before we had to
right.
to stop. And so when for the first few songs, it's all my old fans, and they wanted to see what I was doing. And they know what I'm like. So, but it's really great, being on stage and seeing everybody's laughing, and everybody was smiling, just like Jane taught me, Leela.
Yeah.
As soon as I got on stage, everybody's smiling. So I knew I had them.
Uh-huh. And it's not dissimilar in stylistically either. I mean, country to rockabilly is not, not a
Yeah,
quantum leap.
no, that's true. That's
Mhm.
true. And like Heaven's Gonna Be Empty, the
Yep.
on Don't Follow Me Unless Too, that's a country song.
Yeah,
And
and half of them could transfer to country songs, even if they
and
weren't
they did,
originally.
because that's what I did. I took all my favorite songs that I thought I could countrify, and I took them to the band and said, "Do you guys like this song?" And they'd go, "Yeah." And I'd say, "Well, let's countrify this one." And they'd and then, and it
Uh-huh.
was easy and it was fun. And I think a lot of rock and roll people that like country do that.
Oh,
Somebody
sure.
like Bob Dylan did it, and I can't think of anybody else. I think the band did stuff like that too.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, yeah. So do you have a lot of things on your bucket list yet that you want to, that you still have? Oh, I got to make an album of this, or I got to work with this guy, or I want to, or have you
Nah,
done what you needed to do?
I think I've done what, it would be fun if I could be successful enough to tour, to do one last tour, because I really love performing live. And I would like to take this country band to London, and
Huh?
I'd like to take it, to Austin and, all over the place. But we'll see if that can happen or not, because I don't have the money
Right.
to pay for all those things to happen. And, in the old days, you could get a record deal and they would pay for everything, but it ain't like that no more.
Oh, those days are long, long
I
gone.
know. I'm so lucky that I got to experience that, because Pearl Harbor and the Explosions, we got loaded dough from Warner Brothers.
The good old days, yeah.
Yeah.
The one quibble I have to pick with you about this is I love this cover picture, and
Uh-huh.
the version that's coming out is a different picture of you kind of looking over your shoulder on a motorcycle, I think, or something, right?
Right. That was the English cover
Oh, really?
and Europe. So
Okay.
the purple motorcycle one was for Great Britain and for Europe. And the reason why I like the old one, the American one I like that better too.
Yeah.
But I thought it might be sort of more interesting to have a different cover, and because Americans haven't seen that one either, but they definitely haven't seen the motorcycle one. And then I thought it was a bit more youth oriented in terms of, a younger crowd might like a girl on a motorcycle,
Uh-huh.
as opposed to a young girl singing with a 50s mic,
Well,
like the,
and it's got that you're looking backward, which is kind of, it's a reissue, and so there's a nostalgia element. I mean, I can see that fitting in sort of
yeah.
topically too. And tell me about the album title. What is that? What is that? I mean, I can see how it fits, but what does it, mean to you?
The story isn't that interesting. When I lived in San Francisco, it was a bumper sticker that I saw, and I remember laughing about it.
Uh-huh.
And then at a truck stop, I found a bumper sticker that said, "Don't follow me, I'm lost too." And I had it forever. I don't know what happened to it or where it is now, but I just always thought that was really funny. And I thought it sort of does describe me too, like,
Yeah.
especially when you're young, and there was the new wave and the punk, and everything was changing, and everybody was trying to do something new and so on. And so it was kind of how I felt, is like, I'm just going to do my own thing, so don't follow me, because I
Okay.
don't know what I'm doing either. So that's kind of what that's all about.
Right. So are we going to get reissues of the Pearls Galore and the stuff that came after this, or?
Here Comes Trouble, which was the San Francisco 90s
Right.
rock and roll CD, that was reissued, and Pearl Harbor and the Explosions was
Right.
reissued.
They did that. Yeah, they did the explosions about four
But
years
the
ago.
two Pearls Galore albums, we asked Japan, and they said no, you
Oh.
cannot reissue it. And we asked Island Records, and they said no. But I have a feeling if I keep pursuing it, that they will, because there's no reason why those weren't big money makers for Epic, Sony, or Island. So I don't see why
Yeah.
they
And if this makes a little money, well, then what the hell? Maybe they'll, see that there could be a dime in it.
yeah, you never know.
All right. Well, listen, I will let you get on with the rest of your day. I just want to say again, thanks for your time today. Thanks for this fabulous album and all the other fabulous work you did. And I wish you the best in everything. And I look forward to when you can be working again and hopefully making a new album with the country band.
Yeah, well, I'll let you know if the country thing gets going again.
Yes, please
So
do.
I'll record with them for sure. They're
Oh
really,
yeah, well, yeah,
yeah.
we need more Pearl in our life.
Oh, thank you, Daryl. You really made me happy. Thank you.
All right, cheers. See you somewhere down the road.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.